think it's like once you get exposed to Europe, it's like your dream just starts. You just start dreaming big. And you're like, how can I make this work?
We quickly caught on that there was apparently a shooter in the mall. I'm like, that has to be a joke. I told myself, I'm not dying today. Welcome back to another week's episode of Work in Progress. I am your host, Barbara, and there's no need for introduction here because I am excited to be talking to Adele, who is my team's girlfriend. But the reason why I brought her onto the podcast is because we were having a conversation, Roberto and I were having a conversation about this topic of like the first wave of American immigrants, and I thought that was actually really interesting because I never really heard it like that. And also I think generally you don't always hear the word American and immigrant in the same sentence, you know, as our immigration process in the U.S. is also a whole other hullabaloo of a conversation. So Adele, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
So talk to me a little bit about your story, what brought you to Munich, Germany, and just, I guess, in this part of the world.
Okay. So I guess to take it back to, like, when I was in college, and I've always had the urge to, like, want to go to Europe, and the first time I ever went to Europe was when I was in 8th grade, and I went to London, and I just fell in love with the whole process, and it was... At the time, I was going to an all-girls school, so it was just all girls, and we're on, like, a literature trip, so we're seeing things where Shakespeare was born or was baptized, and I just felt so enriched by the culture and the history of how everything came about, especially in the UK. But then cut to high school, college, that kind of just settled away. But then when I was in college, I saw all my friends study abroad, and at the time I couldn't afford it because I was working in college, and I was always jealous because I had my one roommate. She ended up going to Lacoste because we had a campus there and spent the whole summer in Provence, France. And
oh wow, beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, I envied that, but at the time I was like, I can't afford that. My parents can't, because it was, you got dealing with tuition, and it's like an extra amount to go and stay for the summer. Yes.
Okay. I will shed a light on that with studying abroad, because I think that was what happened for me, at least. I was actually told by my university counselor, she's like, look, you're young, you don't have any children, you have all these like loose end credits, because I came in with so much credits from like my AP Spanish. She's like, all you really need to do is just take some courses and you could actually get a Spanish minor. So like, why don't you consider that abroad? And it was actually cheaper to study abroad.
That's amazing.
Yeah, cheaper to study abroad than having a semester at my university.
Wow.
I'm like, that's actually a bit of a no-brainer to do that. Granted, though, it depends, right? Like, it really depends on the location, because my university at the time for the program that I was pursuing, it was only 2 locations. So it was like in the Madrid campus or the Madrid partner university, or the one in the north of Spain, which the city is called Bilbao. So that's the one that I chose because it was much cheaper than going to Madrid, because it would have been equivalent.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, there's like actually no point.
No.
So I decided to just go to Bilbao, and it was actually an incredible experience. And we'll get into that topic throughout this conversation of the podcast, but that's really what kickstarted everything.
Yeah.
So
I think it's like once you get exposed to Europe, it's like your dream just starts. You just start dreaming big, and you're like, how can I make this work?
Yeah.
So so then I had my other really close friend. We also had a campus in like Hong Kong, and I remember looking back, he really wanted me to go, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And then I was like kind of pushed, but I was like, how am I going to get this work? Because like, I can't find someone to take over my lease in my apartment. Like, I can't spend on that and then spend money on an apartment like in Hong Kong. And like, how am I going to get money for that? Because I have a job. Anyways, so that, you know, I just saw that all unfold like with my friends, and, you know, I envied that. But I was like, you know what? One day I'm going to get myself there. And I'm going to do it on my own, and it's going to be permanent.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into that word permanent, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, when they think about the United States, they're like, wow, like the US is like this like grand big country that's like where the American dream happens. I obviously, I think with along with so many other people, subscribe to that idea, because coming from like immigrant parents, like it was always like this thing of like work hard and then like your merit will pay off.
Yeah.
And I generally believe that up until the point that I graduated from my university, which I don't know, it was like such a surreal day, because that day in particular, like it was like the day that I lived up to for my entire life.
Yeah.
Since my parents like saved up money for college and they wanted me to like go to university, because it was something that they never had the opportunity to do coming into the US as immigrants.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I was a big nerd. I'm proud to say this. And I worked really hard throughout high school and university to get to the university that was my number one choice. But you know, I always think back of it and I'm like, you know, not to say that I'm not grateful for that experience, because I love my university and it's not a decision that I ever regret. But it's interesting to see that even though I worked so hard, sometimes like you have people from like all different walks of life, different universities. That in the US we have this like ranking system. And as you know, like usually it's like, oh, I went to the number one best university in communications or whatever. You would think that that would take you into spaces or rooms that would be elite, right? This network that you're buying into, right?
Get those connections.
Right. And sometimes when you're in these like working environments, for example, in my case, in like the newsroom, and I would be working with my colleagues, they came from all different kinds of backgrounds and walks of life. And like the career paths that we pursued was not linear as to how we got there. So like if you and I were colleagues and we went to completely different universities, let's say your university was ranked number 20 or something, and let's say what we both studied, but mine was ranked number 1. We're still colleagues and we both work together. However, you probably paid a much less expensive price tag of a university than like what I had to pay. Keeping in mind though, thankfully I didn't enter into so much debt because my university covered so much of my expenses for merit reasons. But still, it was still kind of pricey, right? Like I have friends of mine that are in like 6 figures of student loan debt. And just for a bachelor's degree, like this isn't something that, like, I guess for the average European person, they always pursue a bachelor's and a master's degree. And it doesn't even come close to this amount of debt, right? Like you tell them, oh, my degree's going to cost like 20,000 euros. And you're like, as an American, you're like, oh, that's cheap. You know, real talk. And my university, for example, using it as an example, a year it costs like, I think now 70,000.
Yeah, it's insane.
There are people in the US that can pay that. Who those are, I don't know them. And thankfully I didn't enter into that amount of debt. However, like to the point of all of this and all these tangents is like, I've come to realize that sometimes it doesn't always matter where you studied. I think to an extent it does, because you want that network. But if you're naturally a person that, like, for example, puts themselves out there or like really hustles, which is what you talked about earlier, it kind of can happen for you to be where you want to be. However, it comes at a price, like you said.
It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of stress, especially when you don't come from money. And so you're like, okay, how do I navigate? So I graduated from college. Okay, I don't have savings that my parents will just hand over to me. So then I just have to start fresh. And then I'm like thinking, oh, I have the student debt payments coming up. So then I'm like, how am I going to like be able to start in a new city? How am I going to move? You know, it's expensive to move to a new city. And then how, especially when you have to do like a down payment, it's like, and like your credit, it's like your credit score and like all that jazz. Like you have to have that package all together once you come out of college. And not everyone has that.
Not everyone has the resources financially, but also not everyone has the resources in the sense of knowledge. So like for example with me, it was like my first time navigating all of these things. Like my parents didn't know how to like apply to colleges in the US. My parents didn't know much about like, I don't know, renting, right, apartments. Or they did, but it was just different. Like everything that I had to do felt like a first for me, because as much as they like emotionally supported me, it was a lot of the things I had to do by myself for the first time. Or extensive Google or extensive conversations with my friends on how to figure out all of this, because it is hard. You graduate university and then you're looking for a job, and a lot of places, well, when you're applying, you have to expand your search. You can't just like, I believe, just look within like your small town, because it does limit your options.
Yeah.
And so then let's say you find a job somewhere a couple states away, and it's an opportunity that, you know, it's a once in a lifetime to build your career, right? Because you got to start somewhere. And a lot of these places won't pay like relocation packages, which, you know, depending on some industries, some will do, but for the most part, at least in the US, from my experience and from what I know, they don't.
Yeah.
And so then how do you make it happen, right? It's like, okay, I just got a job, but like I can't move there.
Yeah.
Because that happened to me, and I had to find ways. I don't even remember how I did it. I don't know if I asked family or something. Like, it was like having to find a way to move to my first job, to an apartment. And I just remember in like those 6 months that I lived in that small town for my job, I moved like 3 times.
Wow.
Just in 6 months. Like, it's definitely a journey.
It's a lot.
It was definitely a lot. And it's not easy, like you said. And again, it goes back to this whole thing. Like, it's like, what was that all for? Because eventually you wake up, right? Yeah. You wake up from everything that you've normalized for such a long time up until that point. At least, granted, not everyone wakes up. I think you and I are like in the same boat with those people, or that's the Americans that woke up to the reality.
There's a few of us.
Yeah, there are a few of us. I love I look like, not to make this episode of like we're trashing America, but this is like a kind of like a wake up call or a reality check.
Yeah.
Because I see both sides as to why it offers great things, but it really depends on what you value.
Well, and it's also, I feel it's possible. You can make it work. And I think coming from like, you know, like you think like, okay, I need to have like a certain amount of money in my account to make this jump. And then back when I graduated college and then I started researching, I was like, how can I move to Europe? Like, what's the easiest way that doesn't involve like marriage? Because I'm like, I'm not, you know, I just graduated. I'm not going to sign up for marriage right now. No, I want to focus more on my career. I want to find myself. I want to really self-discover myself.
Yeah.
Because and then obviously COVID hit, and then I'm like, okay. But I remember just creating a Google Doc and just providing links of like, okay, how can I do this? How, you know, like, what's my type of job? You know, like the first country I was thinking was like Spain, but then again, I don't know Spanish. So I'm like, how am I going to find a job that's in English?
Yeah.
That gives me financial stability? And I'm like, so I remember just searching and applying, and it was hard. Like, and so then cut to, that was like continuous. And then I'm like, okay, what if I go to grad school? And I was looking in the UK, but then I'm like, that's also more expensive. Like, it's not, the college going in the UK is expensive. And then finding an apartment, it's like,
it's just, the London real estate market is savage.
And so I was like, that dream has died. And then just realizing that, okay, this dream maybe can't become a reality. So then that's where, beginning of last year, went to Spain for 3 months, and I found myself again. It was like this beautiful awakening where I'm in a country that doesn't speak English, but I felt like more at home.
Why
and
is
like
that?
safe, because it's just, I felt like my life was slowing down. I didn't have this like sort of like urge to like rush. I was, you know, like my third eye opened up.
I love that. Ding. Alignment.
And then you realize you don't need all these like materialistic things, because I feel like when you're in the US, it's like
you have to have the latest like things and like
and keeping up with everything. Fashion
the
trends. Yep.
It's any kind of trend. Like, I bought this latest almond cow mixer that excretes whatever the vitamins in the almonds that rejuvenates my gut lining. No, I swear it's like that. Like, it's like, and then you start thinking, oh my god, maybe I should get on that, you know?
Yeah.
I swear, every time I talk to my friends about like anything, like, I don't know, like they bring up, like, for example, supplements, and then like it's like, oh, should I get on this? But then I don't know. It's a lot. I get what you mean.
Well, it's just the way that I feel like it's the capitalists in America, and they just, you just you want more and more and more, but you actually don't need it. Yeah. And I think that's what, like, so far, like, living in Europe, I have, like, come to realize is, like, I'm okay with just, like, the basic needs, but I'm, like, so happy. And it's proving my point. You don't need everything. Yeah. You don't need different, like, 5 different types of body wash or, like, scrubs, and then it's like you see those TikToks on, like, people in America that have it's like visual, the shower of, like, 20 different scrubs.
Really?
Yeah, and that is just
You see that on TikTok?
Yeah.
Why do you need 20 scrubs?
20 different scrubs, 20 different body washes, shampoo. It's just...
What kind of a shower? How big is this shower? Like, I'm like, my shower's not even that big. What the hell?
Well, you just proven that, like, Americans just want bigger, bigger, and bigger.
More, and just more.
And more.
Oh my god, how annoying. I'm glad I'm not like that. Like, I'm okay with just 2. And I'll switch it up. Like, hey, maybe I'm feeling 1 today and 1 tomorrow, but, like, 20, I would get overwhelmed. I'd be like, so I don't know, like, 20 days in a month, maybe 1 every. It's like, that's a lot.
No, I've never realized that. I'm now becoming the person where I reuse the body pump thing, and I just get the bag, and it's like half the price. Oh. And you just refill it. It's
great. The little things in life, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wow. Yeah. It's like things like this. Okay, so now, maybe you've met these people. I've met these people that are a bit, I guess you could say, obsessed with the American dream or just America, which I sometimes cringe a little. I don't know why. You know who you are? Yeah, you know who you are. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to know who I'm talking about, just go to episode 6. Yeah. Shout out to you. So, can you, from your perspective, because I could obviously shine a light, but I'm curious what you would have to say on people that just are obsessed with the American dream. What do you have to say about that, and why are you here ultimately, right? Because if you did subscribe to the American dream, you'd be in the U.S.
Yeah. I think I don't really see it with my college friends, because I feel like I went to an art school, so a lot of us are, like, more open, and we have our own sort of dreams that are not the typical, like, work environment or typical jobs. Like, you're not a lawyer, or, like, you're becoming, like, a doctor or, like, a teacher, like the basic jobs that, like, you need to have, but they're just simple.
More artistic, creative.
Yeah. So I see a lot, like, the more American dream from people I went to high school with. Okay. Like, half of them are engaged. And they're all, like, because I'm 25, so, like, 24, 25, they're all getting engaged. I know people from my class that already have 2 kids. And I think part of me never fit into it, because it's like, I feel like you can achieve so much more. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, because it's like, okay, I went to high school or went to college, and then, okay, I got my job, and then now that's it. And I'm like, no, there's so much more. There's so much you can go and explore, and it's possible. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Because it's like, no, I can't, like, what about, like, the visa process, or, like, I'm like, that's just excuses. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. That's I mean, like,
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot. I mean, it's fair for people to have.
You might want to give up at times, but
yes, it's not impossible, but it's a lot of work. If, like, you try to, if a door doesn't open and the next one doesn't open and the next one, but a window opens, you leap through the window. That's how it was for me. But yeah. Yeah.
But so that, I guess, just kind of just not fitting in with that American dream, where it's like you buy your first home by the time before you're 30, and then you have your nice car, and then you have your 9-to-5 job, and I'm like, that's okay. Like, people are okay with just that, but I'm just like, no. I feel like my life would be too boring, and I would get really tired and not really discover myself. Might discover myself when I'm 40, and then it's too late. So that's where I was like, no. But yeah, no, I met people that's just, and that's okay.
But also, I mean, even what about the friends? I know Roberto had told me that some of your friends, like, that are in California, or even some of your family members, like, they see kind of, like, why you made the move.
Yeah, so, like, the way that my story was, like, how it kind of, like, started to, like, come about was, like, I did an internship at an advertising agency in, like, New York, and that was in pharmaceutical, and I thought, this is what, you know, like, this is gonna be my path. Like, this is my start to, like, my professional career.
The big city, too.
Yeah. Well, it was remote. Because that like, COVID, yeah, it was terrible, but there were some pluses in a way where people like me who couldn't go to couldn't afford to go to New York for a whole summer. Right. So it was nice to be able to work from home in Pennsylvania and get, like, a New York salary. So, but then as I realized, I was like, I don't really want to do this because I think I kind of self-discovered that I'm not good at, like, just sitting on a computer and, like, designing and just that. I'm like, I'm not a graphic designer. I'm much more than that. So, and then I think towards the end of the internship, I was visualizing, like, moving myself to, like, Philadelphia and, like, getting my cute little apartment, maybe adopting a cat. And I'm like, okay, that's what my life's gonna be, you know, like, everyone around me is doing that. Yeah. But it's like, it didn't feel like my calling. So then I went to California, and I saw my, like, best friend that I haven't seen in, like, years, and it was beautiful. And then I also went with my other close best friend that's from high school. She went, but we kind of did our own separate things, but then we met up. But we just kind of, I brought up the conversation, and also my two cousins live there. And my cousin, she's a nurse. And then my other cousin, he works in sales, and he lives right on the beach.
In Venice, right?
It's in
Monica.
No, it's right next to Venice. Like, if you go, like, here's Venice, and then go inland, and then go around. So,
because usually it's like, okay, side tangent. I used to live in Los Angeles. So you have Santa Monica, you keep walking, then you walk into Venice. So it has to be after that then.
Yeah, it's like it's near the airport.
Oh, isn't it Manhattan? No.
It's close.
Hermosa?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, maybe it's Hermosa. Damn.
But no, like,
yeah, but Californians, if you're watching this, tell me what it is down in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube.
I forget the name.
I want to say it's Hermosa Beach, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, Del Rey.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Anyway, but I went and saw him, and I sat, and I was like, there's something wrong. Like, something's missing out of him. And I'm like, you live, like, on the beach.
And in California, too, right? Like, everyone
like,
romanticizes.
You step out, and you look to your left, and you see the fucking ocean. Like, that's a dream. And he was like, he's not, you know, he's paying a good amount of money, but it's just like, he's overly drained from work, and it's very demanding, and it's just, you know, I feel for him. And I was just seeing this, and I'm like at this point where I'm like, and I will look back, I'm sitting on the beach with my friend, and she's in accounting, and she lives in New York, and she was like, I'm jealous of you because you have this flexibility. And it really sat with me, because I'm like, it made me realize, I'm like, holy shit, you're right. I might not have, like,
the oceanfront view apartment.
Yeah, that, or I don't have, like, my savings. I don't have a 401k. I don't have, like, health insurance. Like, you know, like, I'm in this transitional point, and it's like, I have to make the right decision. Yeah. That, where is it, you know, like, what's the right direction?
And let me even, like, highlight on that, because I think to some people watching, they might think, or listening to this podcast, is that, oh, just because you have a stressful job doesn't mean that doesn't happen anywhere else. It does. Yeah. Like, there are stressful jobs everywhere. But on top of that layer of stress comes other factors. When you're living in the U.S., like, commuting is a stressor, especially in California. You spend hours on end during the week, like, day by day, spending your time in traffic, which is a stressor. Having to pay for basically everything and anything. Car insurance, your phone bill, your medical insurance, which it could be affordable if you have an employer that subsidizes it, or it's probably out of your own pocket and it's not cheap.
Yeah.
If you have any student loans, you have to pay for that. If you want to go out, that's like a little sprinkle added benefit on top of everything else that you're paying for, and so forth and so on. I mean, it's like a lot of expenses. I could use myself as an example when I was working at my dream job before I moved to Germany. And I remember getting paid like, let's just say roughly, I can't remember right now, like $3,600 a month. And you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, half of my salary was going to my rent. I was living by myself. And it's not like I had the luxury to just live at home, because I told myself, why would I commute 2 hours? So basically back and forth would have been a 4-hour commute every single day. Like, that's just a little insane. I could probably let go like maybe 30 minutes. That's a little bit more acceptable for American standards. But the 2-hour commute one way and then back again, like every single day, was just out of the question. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to move into the city.
Yeah.
At this point, my parents are no longer living in Miami. And yeah, that came with so many, costs. So many costs. And then having to obviously furnish your apartment, that's a cost. And then, I don't know, it's just a lot of things that you just don't foresee.
Yeah.
As much as you think, okay, I'll just get like the bare minimum. But sometimes it eventually, there are certain things along the way that you have to pay for. And then obviously everything else on top of that. With having a bit of a life, because it's not just like work. A lot of people, I think, in the States make their jobs their identity.
Yeah.
Hence why when you get laid off, which is a very common thing, or you get fired, 2 different things, by the way, but when either of those things happen to somebody in the States, it's like their world just comes crashing down.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is, another thing for maybe those that think that this is how it works in the U.S., Social Security nets aren't super common.
Yeah.
So like unemployment benefits are very difficult to come by. At least it's state by state case basis. Severance packages are not a common thing. Like, I know very few people that when they got fired, their companies, like, I don't know, gave them a severance of like 3 months worth of their salary just to hold by while they find another job.
Yeah.
At least my company did not do that to me when I ultimately lost my job, and that was probably one of the hardest things ever, having to recover from that, because I was dependent on myself financially. Like, my parents weren't giving me any money. They're like, this is the life you've chosen, you have to make your bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, adulting sucks. And it was tough,
Yeah,
it's like
it's a lot.
the system itself, I don't want to say it sets you up to fail, but you have to be so meticulous and calculated of every single decision that you make.
Yeah.
And if you F up once,
You're
that's
fucked.
it.
You're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I saw myself in situations, I don't know if I've ever gone, I know I've gone on the record about this on Instagram Live, but for anybody that has never heard this before, I will again. But basically, when I was 24 years old, I had my dream job. Obviously, at the time, I grew, for personal reasons, depressed. Did not feel comfortable telling my employer. I think a lot of people in the States probably feel the same way. How are they going to understand all that? And so there was no support in that sense, so I just didn't feel the need to tell them. And obviously my performance took an impact from it. I tried my best to like really perform at my job, but eventually it was just like I was questioning a lot. I was like, why am I in this industry? Like all these things. And then eventually, mutually, but more so on their end, they just screwed me over left field, and I had no means of recovering from that financially.
Wow.
Had to move out of my apartment that I had just signed a year lease on. I had to find a subleaser. I had to get somebody to what was it? I had to find like a place to put all my things in storage. I basically was living out of my car for like a couple months, couch surfing from friend's place to friend's place.
Damn.
Some people might think, oh, but where are your parents and all of this? And it's like, at that point, I was 24 now at this point, I didn't want to like admit defeat or failure.
No, you didn't have anything to fall back on.
Yeah, I mean, I could have just gone home, but at the same time, it's like...
You didn't want to.
I didn't want to because I had already at that point been living outside of my house for 6 years. I had left when I was 18 to go to college. And I was just like, I have grown a level of independence that if I go back home, I would have been a failure. That's how I felt really internally. And so for months, I was like couch surfing. And it was not the nicest thing to have to bother people because I felt like a bother.
Yeah.
It was rough. And I don't wish that upon anybody, because you actually start developing, which I think a lot of people in the US suffer from, this is the scarcity mentality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a tough one to come out of or to bounce back from. It does leave remnants years after I guess you could say, the traumatic event. Thankfully we're not there anymore, but it is a thing that happens to a lot of Americans, actually.
Well, yeah, because it's like you don't ever have the time to heal. And I think personally, like once I graduated college, I'm, you know, like I did move back home, and I was like, I don't have any other option. But I flipped it because I was like, you know what, this is going to give me the time to heal and prepare me for my life and my future. Like I'm young still, I'm going to focus on dealing with my mental issues and just trying to heal that and put that back together, and also heal my relationship with my family. And like I wasn't close through college, because I went to college like 7 hours away, and so I would only go home like once a year. But now, you know, like I was able to like go back, help my mom, you know, like she went through like really bad loss in like 2 years ago, and it was a lot to like see her go through, but I was there to support her because she had no one else that was, you know, like she had my siblings, but I'm the oldest. You know, I had to take on that responsibility to really put the pieces back together for my family, and it was beautiful to see. But if I went the traditional route where I moved to like a big city and just started getting a job and like, okay, you know, live in an apartment with like 5 other people and just kind of do that rush like lifestyle, I probably wouldn't, you know, like I would still continue having that type of behavior towards my family and not really ever having that relationship.
Yeah.
And now it's like my family's very important, and I want to be there for them when I can.
Yeah.
So that's just, I think it's very important to take that time to heal. And like that's the thing, like Europe, it's like I know like a coworker, my work is allowing them to take off 2 months. Like 2 months.
For what?
Just to, I think they might be getting married.
Oh.
That's
nice.
Like
it's really nice.
So I don't know where I'm going with that, but yeah.
No, I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking something that I think happens a lot, which I lacked when I was living in my own city. I love you, Miami, till I die. 305 till I die. However, the problem that I think I was missing, and I think this happens to anywhere in the States, correct me if I'm wrong, is this lack of community.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I became emotionally dependent on a person that when they left, I lost everything.
Yeah.
Not because I was just like dependent on this one person, but everything that came with it. So like the friends that he invited me to and had me meet and all this, like once he left, I lost everything. Like, no, bye friends. And I did have my own friends, don't get me wrong, but people were getting engaged, having babies, getting married in a different phases of their lives. And also the friendships just like distanced the moment that I had left Miami to go to Los Angeles. And very few kept up with me, like staying in touch.
Yeah.
No offense. I understand. I don't take it too personal. But that is something that like, wow, did I need? You know, because granted, obviously everyone in one shape or another, everyone has their family, but the relationships are a little bit different. Not everybody has like tight-knit family, and not everybody can communicate with their parents or their family the same way that they could with their friends, because you know, generational, cultural, what have you, it affects the relationship.
Yeah, because I feel like friends are very important, and I think that's what my cousin's struggling right now. It's like his company got split, so the friends that he had at work moved to the other company, so he doesn't have any sort of community. Because like I feel like, especially going to college in the US, it's you create friends for life, and you have this like sort of like hub, and then but how do you transfer that to the work life and like still have a sort of community, have friends that you can like lean on and have like go to talk to, that's not your family. And I think a lot of people in America are having a hard time finding that group of friends that didn't go to their college. Because like a lot of people that went to my college, they all live in New York. So they all hang out because they
know each other from the past, from college.
But then
what about to those that don't? You know?
Yeah, because there's no sort of community. That's right.
And that's the thing as well. I remember even like there was this girl that had just moved from Texas to Miami, and we were both in the same industry, so that's kind of how we met. Yeah. The industry's small, and we were. One day I remember we did this as a social experiment, and we went out to Miami's nightlife, bars, all that, to just literally just strike up a conversation with like a random stranger or strangers. Tell me how. Everybody looked at us like we were crazy, like,
There's so much judgment.
And I was like, okay, what am I doing that's so odd? Yeah. Like, I'm coming up to you to talk to you. It's not like I'm like showing you my dick. Like, no, it
should be like a normal thing. It should be a normal thing.
It's a normal thing. It's not like I'm like behaving in this unsolicited way. Yeah. Because it's like, then what is considered normal? Back in the day, 20, 30 years ago, people would just come up to you and say, hey, how are you? Like, it's a human behavioral thing where we interact with each other, because it's not like we were designed to be like loners. Yeah. Like, we're what's the word that I'm looking for here? But like, we're creatures of behavior, of
and antisocial now. Well, it's because I think so many of us are glued to our phones, so we're forgetting how. I was like talking. The professor was talking about this in my class. It's like like what's gonna happen? Like, how is technology? What's technology doing to us? Is it ruining us? Yeah. Is it helping us? Like, I think it ends up splitting because for the typical humans, and like they're becoming less interactions. They can't go sit at a coffee shop and like go meet someone. It's
like those meet cute moments like in the movies. Yeah, they don't have
it's that not often. A thing.
No.
But like, I will say, like, on a brighter note, like, since being here, like in Europe since December, I've met people, like, I met one friend. She's German. I walk into the coffee shop that's like right next to my school, and she's sitting. She had this like bulldog, and I was like, oh my god, because I'm like, at first, like, you don't want to just like go up and approach like a dog, and you're like, not yours, but then she's like, no, bet, and then we ended up having this like deep conversation. And then we exchanged phone numbers, and complete stranger. And like, we were gonna hang out in like maybe like 2 weeks, but I was like, that was amazing.
The little things.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't think I've ever had that happen in the US. It's like, I think we're too scared to talk to each other, or we're too nervous. And if it's not someone that we went to school with.
Yeah. And that's, I think it's funny that you say that, coming from Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Like, I grew up.
I'm coming from the city that is Miami. Yeah. And then going to school in Los Angeles, and like, yeah, the feeling is very mutual for across, I think, the U.S. Yeah. I think also one other point that we haven't mentioned here, and these are other things that I think you had mentioned as well, like not feeling safe. Yeah. So let's transition into that, because I think that's really important to not neglect. Trigger warning if you feel triggered by this, so if you want to skip forward, please feel free to do so.
I get some water.
But I want to know a little bit about your perspective and experience as an American whenever you hear the topic of gun violence or shootings come up in a conversation, or the news brings up another shooting. What are your thoughts on that? And also, have you ever experienced anything like that? I mean, any friends, any stories you shine a light on?
Yeah, well, I listen to the news every single day. I listen to NPR and like also BBC, like World News. Considering like living in Europe, like I think being someone from America, like I think a lot of Americans only tend to listen to local news or like what's happening in the US, but then I feel like being in Europe, it's a respect to like know what's happening everywhere, because it can all interact with each other. But no, like recently, like hearing about all the gun shootings, it's so sad, and I'm scared for the country, because it's like, we're all human. Why are we trying to kill each other? Like, that shouldn't be a thing. And kids, it's so unhumane. Yeah, little like 3-year-old, 5-year-olds. Like, how in the hell are we giving access to like I forget what it's called.
assault weapons.
Okay, assault weapons. See? Wouldn't even know.
Well, and it's like, I grew up, like, the way that I grew up, my mom hated guns. And, like, my cousins would always have, like, the airsoft guns, and, like, those look like real guns. And they're, like, little BB guns. And my mom never allowed my brother to play Call of Duty or, what's the other one? Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto?
Yeah, like, he only was allowed to play, like, sport games.
Okay.
And so, because my mom just didn't like that sort of violence. So I just kind of grew up with just, like, okay with guns, but not really, like, ever really affected by it. But then when you get to high school and you're like, why are we having a drill learning if someone comes in as with a gun to, like...
Did you?
We didn't have... Like, I went to Catholic school. We like, practice drilled. Like...
But did you ever have an active shooter drill?
Like... If a person came in, no, just
okay,
like,
because I didn't.
I've never had an experience, but we would practice if something like that were to happen.
Okay.
So, because, like, I think that's when I think the Sandy Hook happened, and so I think everyone was just kind of wake up call, like, holy shit, this can actually happen if we're not, like, safe. But yeah, no, I think that we need to have, like, restrictor. I don't want to get too political, but I think there needs to be more of a background check, restrictor gun laws, because it's happening. Like, you hear about a shooting, like, once a week. And it's so sad. Like, where is this going to go in the forthcoming years in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, I also, like, to that point, I also, like, don't find the topic to be funny. I think some people, like, when they meet an American, that's, like, the first thing that nowadays they think of, which is kind of sad.
Well, they laugh at us.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. When I studied abroad in 2016, I never had, like, anybody refer to guns in a conversation when I was involved.
Yeah.
And then now, fast forward to, like, 7 years later, now that's, like, an image of America.
Yeah.
So, to my fellow Americans, if you're watching this, think about that. Do you really want to be associated to guns? I don't know. At least I wouldn't. But that's the way, I don't know, I perceive those kind of conversations, and eventually it just get annoying. Yeah. It's like, haha, okay, you know? But it's also not a light topic, I think. At all. It shouldn't be.
It's scary.
Yeah.
Because, like, why...
You just don't feel safe.
No.
I personally don't. I can give another example of this. I went through what seemed, at the time, like an actual shooting. And this was when I was working at the mall that I had always worked at as a cashier at a shoe store. And I remember I was, like, just doing my job, scanning away, pew, 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 pew. And there was this lady, I'll never forget, who was such an asshole to me. But whatever. We digress. And I'm looking at the corner of my eye as I'm checking her out. And I'm seeing people running out the store. Like, not out the store, but, like perspective inside looking out. I saw people running down the hall. I was like, what the heck? Like, what's going on? And then eventually, like, we quickly caught on that there was apparently a shooter in the mall. And I'm like, that has to be a joke. I told myself, I'm not dying today.
Yeah.
And mind you, we never had a drill. We weren't, like, educated on what to do. It was all pure instinct.
Yeah.
And the store manager and I looked at each other and we're like, are you ready? Okay, I didn't freeze. I was like, go, move, act now. We closed the store. We had told everybody to go back, go all the way back to the store, kind of like to hide. And we were just waiting for somebody to tell us what's happening.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a guy that, like, came up close to the gate of the store. And we're like, hey, what's happening? And he's like, his face was super red. He was, like, out of breath. Like, watery face, eyes, like, puffy, because he was, I don't know, I guess, like, just experienced so much shock. And then he just told us that, like, basically it was fake. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, like, there was, like, the store next door, which was, like, the store literally next to us, apparently. Some woman screamed because she thought that she saw a real gun that some boy was holding, which was a fake gun. It was, like, again, like that gun that you were mentioning,
like
like something
guns, yeah.
like that, and she thought it was real and screamed, and everybody in the store was in panic and started running.
Yeah, no.
So it's to show you that the environment in the States is really tense. And that shouldn't be normalized. But I feel like because you hear it all the time, it becomes
well, yeah, it's
normal.
like people are starting to normalize it, and they're not waking up and seeing like this is an issue, and
the people to be though, the ones that are in positions of power.
Exactly.
Because I think the collective understands.
I think
this is messed up.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like a lot of the states are divided, and it's causing this sort of hectic because they refuse and they're in denial that this is an issue, when in reality it is an issue and there's evidence and it's happening every single week. Like, why are we not doing it? Why are we not? But then, like, you don't hear anything like that in Europe.
Very few.
Yeah, it's very few. It's just, I've never felt safe ever, like, in a city. Like, living in Munich, it's like, I feel so safe.
I mean, yeah, there are cities that range in safety in Europe, as you know. But yeah, totally, I agree with that.
Well, and then I guess and then falling back for being a woman too, when it's like, you know, I feel like it's important if you live in America, and especially when you live in like New York or like live in a big city, you should know how to defend yourself. And so like I took like self-defense classes because I wanted to protect myself, or like protect my friends if we were ever to be attacked. And doing that, I was like, okay, I feel confident, but not everyone has that instinct to be like, okay, let me go take a self-defense class. But then in reality, like, why do we need to live in a society that we have to protect ourselves? Like, it should be safe.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, common sense, right? To everybody. It's really tragic.
Yeah.
Well, I love talking to you about this topic, and I think we could go on and on. Let's do some concluding thoughts. So, to those who are listening or watching, thank you so much for reaching this end of the episode. What do you have to say, I guess, to the people that are listening or watching, if they were considering moving to America? I mean, like, you know, I know that sometimes a bunch of people would tell me, oh, but it can't be all that bad. So, thoughts on that, if you could elaborate, just advice for those that are considering making the move to our country. And then also to anybody that wants to do what we did.
Oh, okay.
We got two spectrums there, so that's two answers. So
well, starting, oh gosh, I've never talked this much before. Just kidding. I guess moving to America, my advice would just be get ready. It's going to be challenging, but you can make it work. I think when you have a steady job, it's better and you feel like more secure, but just get ready to be exposed to a lot of things and make sure you have that safety net. Because if you have that safety net, then I feel like you can succeed.
What does that mean? What safety net?
Like safety net would, I think, just that savings of money, like having money saved up, or that's connections. And then I start slow and maybe don't move to the biggest city. Maybe move outside the city and commute in, because I think once you're in like a big environment, you might get really overwhelmed. But it's like, if that's your dream, then you do it. We all have our own dreams. But yeah, that's my advice.
And then for those that want to make the move over here, like what we did,
do it. It's possible.
2 words.
I've never been so happy in my life, and I don't have a lot of things, and I'm okay. I'm not making that much money right now, but it's like, that's what I've come to realize, like, living in Europe, you need money, but it's not something that consumes your life. You can have a sort of balance, and I think it's doable. Might be a little stressful. You might want to give up.
Yes.
But you just gotta keep climbing up that mountain and make it to the peak. Yes. And then it's just, you take the sled right down.
Also remember why you're doing it. Like, I think you just always have to remember and focus on, like, what was the original purpose for you to come? Exactly. You know, was it because you just wanted to get away from the violence? Was it because you just don't agree with the politics? Was it because of the fact that you just don't feel safe as a woman? Like, there's so many reasons, right? find that, hold on to that. And I think even though there's going to be a lot of gray and gloomy days,
don't move in December.
That too, if you want to move to Germany. But there's going to be a lot of those days.
Yeah.
And just hold on to the small moments that you'll find when you move abroad and start over.
Yeah, because it's quite beautiful. It is. It's nice and bright over here.
As we're looking at the sunshine, and we're going to run out and enjoy what we have left. So anyway, thank you so much, everyone who's watching who's made it this far and watching on YouTube. If anybody wants to go and contact Adele.
Oh boy. My Instagram or
yeah, whatever you want.
My Instagram is really simple. It's just Adele.Trefry, Trefry.
Okay. And if you want to get in touch with her and ask her any questions on how she did it or ask me anything, feel free to do so. And thank you so much.
No, well, thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah.
It was so nice.
Was it that bad?
No, wasn't. Okay. I feel like once I got in the what's the word? The vibe, the groove. Yeah. I just let it all flow out.
Okay, well, see, I told you.
Yeah, okay. No, you're amazing.
Yay,
so
thank you. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone watching. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye. Ciao.
Choose. Oh my god.